episode of Preps to Pros. I'm Cooper Petagna alongside Andrew Ivins. Getting the technical difficulties started early today, Drew, but we got a great show planned, and we appreciate you guys as always. Remember, subscribe to the 24/7 Sports channel, leave a comment. Drew, we had one of our best shows on Monday. So much to talk about then. We talked about Oklahoma. We're breaking it down, a lot of the juice as well. And we're going to get into that this week, but we're going to talk a little bit more about this weekend, week one. Week 0 was full of a lot of action, but we're going to get into a little college football, recruiting, NFL as well. But Andrew, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm gearing up. Every morning I've kind of woke up trying to, see some new lines out there and thinking it's Thursday morning, but it's only Wednesday. So Thursday, I'm excited, full slate of games or a deep slate of games, and then it goes right into the weekend, football for the next 5 days. So sign me up. I'm ready to go.
It's here. We've been talking about it all off season. Starts tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about Central Florida, but we're going to start in the state of Florida with a top 247 receiver. Andrew, I believe you have some juice on the guy they call Tyler Williams, who's got a lot of the top programs around the country on him.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into this one this morning. It sounds like Tyler Williams is going to visit Miami on Saturday for the Hurricanes opener against Bethune-Cookman, Mario Cristobal's first game there at Hard Rock Stadium. Tyler is a guy that didn't have the Hurricanes in his top group of schools. I still like Georgia here, but I think this is a notable kind of visit for Tyler Williams. And he's going to make a commitment here in a few weeks. September 23rd, I think, is his date. Georgia is the clear-cut leader on the crystal ball. He's also taken some official visits to Texas A&M, South Carolina. Clemson's in there. But we've talked about it in the past, talked about it last show. Miami's looking to add an elite wide receiver, and it seems like they're trying to throw their hat into the Tyler Williams sweepstakes. So certainly a notable visitor for Mario Cristobal, and I think it's one that's probably going to fly a bit under the radar given some of these other recruiting weekends elsewhere, but still certainly notable.
Notable for sure. We talked about Miami. Remember, Drew, when we talked about the quarterback carousel, we were talking about what team is going to be left out, and we thought that was going to be Miami. That's not the case. They ended up going out all the way to California, getting one of the best quarterbacks in arms in the country, and top 247 quarterback Jaden Rashada. Now you got receiver Tyler Williams, Brandon Ennis we talked about, right? Also Hakeem Williams, Miami trying to get in the mix. So we'll keep an eye on the Canes as they try to close on one of the top receivers in the country. But Drew, let's get a little weird with it. We're going to go to the AAC now. We're going to talk about a team that we haven't talked about, and that's Rhett Lashley in the SMU Ponies. How about them? But you hit me up before the show. You said, hey, Coop, there's a guy down there that's going to make a visit to SMU. This is worth a guy worth our attention in terms of us keeping our eyes on him, but that is tight end Adam Moore, 3-star, number 64 tight end in the country from Northwestern High School in Miami.
Yeah, he's a guy we're probably a little too low on. Adam Moore this past week against Venice High School in Miami Northwestern traveled out there. He had close to 100 receiving yards, and a touchdown. And this is a kid who was awesome on the 7-on-7 circuit for the Miami Immortals. I mean, he was a jump ball machine, one of the most natural pass catchers when it comes to a big body guy that's pushing 225 pounds, and it sounds like he's going to visit SMU for their game against TCU in a few weeks. And I think this is notable because Rhett Lashley and what he wants to do on offense is get tight ends involved, and he's very familiar with Adam Moore. Remember, last year Rhett Lashley called plays for the Hurricanes there in Coral Gables. So I think, if SMU were to get Adam Moore, that's certainly a notable pickup because he's going to be potentially an impact guy. And SMU, they know what they're doing when it comes to evaluating tight ends. RJ Maryland is a kid they got out of South Lake Carroll last year. It sounds like he's going to play as a true freshman. So a little G5 juice, but I still think it's kind of interesting that SMU is recruiting in the 305, given where they are located in the United States, right there in Dallas. But I think this is more of them knowing what Adam brings to the table and trying to seal the deal.
I love it. We're going to change it up every now and then, but let's stay in the G5 and talk about a team that's going now to the Power 5 next year and to the Big 12. That's Central Florida and Gus Malzahn, who is looking to build on the momentum already that they've established in the 2023 cycle. But it looks like they're going to have a pretty good list of visitors, in-state talent, coming to see them play against South Carolina State tomorrow.
Yeah, UCF normally opens up on Thursday nights, and I don't know if this was by design, but it allows for them to be the only only show in town, and they can get a lot of local kids out. Looking at that list of expected visitors, John Walker, the top 247 defensive lineman, he's the headliner. I mean, they beat out Miami, they beat out Florida, Ohio State for his pledge a few weeks ago. But there's also some flip targets. Darren Lawrence, a wide receiver that's committed to Florida State, he's going to be in the stands. I think UCF's one to watch there. He attends Sanford Seminole High School, and UCF has had a ton of success there. And, UCF is also laying the foundation for their 2024 class. We've talked about what they did in 2022. We know what they're doing right now in 2023. Well, in 2024, Jalen Hayward's a top 247 defensive back right in their backyard. So Gus Malzahn and his staff continue to prioritize the Orlando area. And I think that's going to pay dividends down the stretch once they make that shift into the Big 12, because these are guys that can have an impact at that type of level.
We've mentioned the potential of Central Florida and their recruiting prowess now with them transitioning to the Big 12 after this season. And Drew, this kind of, I guess, makes sense for us now to transition to our next topic. But games coming up this weekend, week one, there are so many noteworthy matchups that we're going to have our eyes on. And one of those teams that is going to transition to the Big 12 with Central Florida, and that's going to be Cincinnati. And what we're going to do here, just to preface it a little bit, we're going to go by game. We're going to talk about teams that have the most to win or gain, on the recruiting trail with week one victory. So not so much about the game, but the potential of what these teams could do if they pull off a victory. And I want to start with Cincinnati in Arkansas. I mean, that is a huge game this weekend. Josh Pate is going to be there. He's bringing his tour there in a game that many really, I wouldn't say it's getting the time that it deserves, talked about nationally. And there are a ton of other big games this weekend, but you talk about it, Sam Pittman, Luke Fickell, Arkansas coming off a 9-4 season last year where they surprised some people, Cincinnati college football playoff appearance, and then also had 9 players drafted in this past NFL draft. But Andrew, right now, Cincinnati's sitting at the number 21 team in the country in terms of the 24/7 Sports composite team rankings. If they can go into Arkansas and beat a really strong SEC West team and a team that's trying to legitimize themselves as a contender in the SEC, I mean, that's got to pay huge dividends for Luke Fickell, right?
Yeah, I would think so. And when you kind of look at Cincinnati's recruiting class, I mean, they're pretty full as is right now. I don't know how much of a runway they're going to have to flip some other guys. Now, maybe they could shuffle the board a little bit, try to target some prospects they didn't think they had a seat at the table with. But to me, this game is all about the 2024 cycle for Cincinnati. You look at the schedule for the Bearcats. There are some difficult games that come down the stretch. I mean, they need this win because you also got to face teams like Indiana. You go to SMU. You go to UCF. You play an improved ECU team. So for me, I mean, the darling at the dance last year was Cincinnati. A lot of kids have taken notice of that. Everyone knows who Sauce Gardner is, what he did during the season, what he did as a rookie during preseason games. I don't think he was thrown at in 3 games. So to me, if they win in Fayetteville, that keeps it going, and that allows them to sell that image of, hey, we can get it done. We can get you to the NFL. That's what I think this game's all about to me. Not the 2023 class, but the 2024 class.
I agree long term. And if you're a Cincinnati fan, you got to like where you're sitting right now inside the top 25 of the 24/7 Sports composite team rankings. And, this game's going to be interesting. We don't know who the quarterback is going to be yet, whether that's going to be Evan Prater or Ben Bryant for Cincinnati and the Bearcats, but that's going to be a team that's ready to go. And on the other side, Arkansas, a lot of expectations. Drew Sanders coming in from Alabama, the highly touted linebacker, Jaden Hazelwood from Oklahoma as well. They've done a really good job in the transfer portal. AJ Jefferson is back. So Arkansas also recruiting at a high level right now, the number 16 ranked recruiting class in the country. So another team that can certainly benefit. And if they can elevate after a 9-4 season, I think Arkansas is going to be in a great place there. But Drew, the next game, Oregon in Georgia at a home game, or a neutral site game for Georgia in Atlanta. We've seen this before with kind of the Pac-12 SEC matchup down in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But this is an interesting one. A lot of different dynamics going on here. You got Dan Lanning, the former defensive coordinator of the Georgia Bulldogs, last year national championship team, now the head coach of the Oregon Ducks. The Ducks come in as a 17.5-point underdog into this game. But I'm looking at Oregon's class right now, the number 14 class in the 2023 cycle. They only have 16 commits, and they have two guys ranked inside the top 16 with top 247 quarterback Dante Moore and Jurion Dickey, who we talked about on last show, how much we love. Drew, if they can somehow pull this game off, which I think is somewhat far-fetched, but even be competitive in this game, I think that's going to give Dan Lanning a lot of juice on the trail.
Oh, I would agree. I think it'd be a monster upset, and it would be huge for Oregon because it's a plant your flag type of victory in SEC country. I mean, Atlanta's the home of college football. It's the home of the SEC. That's where the media days are, or they have been. And if Oregon can go in there, I think a lot of kids in the Florida, in Georgia, South Carolina, and Alabama, they're going to take notice. And when I look at Oregon's class, what I like is they got their quarterback one in Dante Moore. They got a wide receiver one in Jurion Dickey. And then they got a nice running back in Dante Dowdle, who I know some schools are trying to actively flip. I think Ole Miss is making a run at the in-state running back. So to me, a strong performance keeps the vision going. I think that's so important. You know, when these first-year head coaches come in, and Cooper, I know you've been part of those staffs where you're trying to sell a vision, and if things go south real fast on the field, you're eventually going to have to get on the phone and address some of those questions to recruits. So to me, I think Oregon just needs to keep this close. And if they were to pull it off, you're talking about a monumental victory there in Atlanta.
Well, it's huge, right? But the other important side note about this is that on the recruiting calendar, September 1st, right? Starting tomorrow, now juniors can be contacted by college football staffs, at least from a legal standpoint per the NCAA calendar. So that direct contact now is going to be legal as of midnight on September 1st. So even the 2023 cycle, yes, with the guys that they're trying to finish with in this class, you talk about Mateo Uiagalelei, David Hicks in there as well, two guys that we really like as front seven defenders, Samuel Mpemba from IMG Academy. This game on a national stage, 2:30 in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, if Oregon can find a way to pull this off, would have huge implications in a positive way for Dan Lanning and his staff, and a staff that recruits very well nationally, and they're tied in the Southeast. So going up against the defending national champions, they're certainly going to have their work cut out for them. But like you said, Drew, looking at all the matchups this weekend, to me, Oregon is probably the team in Notre Dame. We'll put them in that category as well with the most to gain. But Drew, let's talk about a team in your home state there, and a team that we love to talk about. That's Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. And to me, probably the most intriguing matchup of this weekend is going down in the Swamp, where Billy Napier faces Kyle Whittingham, Cam Rising, and the Utah Utes, the Pac-12 champions last year, who played in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State, hard-fought game. But they come up on the short end. And Drew, Florida right now, I feel like it's just been this emotional roller coaster with us following. You obviously follow Florida very closely. The number 10 ranked recruiting class momentum, to me, seems like it's continuing to build. They're not done yet. If they win this game, and it's only a 2.5-point line right now for the Utes, they win this game, which I think is very plausible given who's at quarterback. To me, Florida right now, you got to love the position that they're in.
Well, I think this weekend is all about Cormani McClain and Dejon Mustard Johnson. I think Florida, they have a bulk of their class in place. I think a lot of those commits, according to the guys at Swamp 247, will be in the stands at the Swamp. And Billy Napier has been on social media. He's leaked it to the media. He wants everyone to get there early, be loud, create a home field environment. And I think Gator Nation is going to show up and do just that. So to me, if Florida can get a victory over a top 10 program in Utah on a national stage under the lights, it's going to be huge. And I I think that would really, really help them again with Cormani McClain. My crystal ball is on the Gators. I think Alabama is the one you got to watch for him. But man, if they can get a signature, if Billy Napier can get a signature win in his first game, that's going to go a long, long way. And we'll see how that defense plays. I agree. I think this one is close, and Vegas seems to have no idea which way this game is. I mean, this line has been all over the place. Florida's been favored, then it was Utah, now it's dropping again. I mean, this could get down to 1 or 2 points. I think it's going to be must-watch TV on Saturday night, if we're being honest. Just what does Billy Napier's squad look like, and how do they handle and react to a really talented Utah team?
Drew, on the other side, you made the point before the show we were talking. You said you want to talk about Utah a little bit because you feel like this game for them, if they pull this off in the state of Florida, an area where they are very active in the recruiting area, you think this could be a big positive for them as well?
Absolutely. And it's kind of the same thing with Oregon. You're getting a victory in SEC land, where all the talent is. Everyone wants to recruit the state of Florida. And with the Utes, they've signed 3 guys out of the Sunshine State last cycle. That includes Jalen Two-Piece Glover, who sounds like he might play as a true freshman on Saturday night, might get some carries in that backfield. And to me, this only would allow Utah to now go after a different level and caliber of prospect in the Sunshine State, in the state of Georgia. I mean, Kyle Whittingham and his staff can say, hey, why do you want to play for Florida? We just beat Florida. We get guys to the NFL as well. So I think that's certainly an interesting storyline. They also got Michael Mitchell, a 3-star running back who Florida State's kicking the tires on. I think it helps you play a little defense. So yeah, Utah has a ton to gain here, and same with Florida. But this is why we wanted these matchups. Remember a few years ago, both these schools would be opening up against FCS opponents. This is awesome. It just has created a situation where it's very high risk and high reward.
Love the dynamic of this game. You have arguably the toughest team in the Pac-12. I think from a mentality standpoint, I think Utah has proved that over the years as well, going against a program right now that's trying to form an identity in the SEC. And this would be a huge blow. Josh Pate was talking about this on Late Kick. This would be a huge blow to the Pac-12, where the presumable favorite of that conference, if they go in to a team like Florida, where this is obviously a year where they're trying to establish foundation, and lose this game, that is definitely going to be a big blow through their CFP considerations. But Drew, let's move on to another first-year head coach. That is Marcus Freeman, and he has his work cut out for him. 17.5-point dog. Don't tell him. It sounds like he heard about that for the first time, said that's going to be extra motivation. But they're going to be in Columbus on Saturday night. We all know what that Ohio State Buckeyes offense is capable of. Their question mark's going to be on defense. But to me, Drew, I kind of circled this one, and I was like, you know what? This is fascinating, because we've talked a lot about what Notre Dame needs to do to be able to keep players like 5-star edge Keon Keeley in the boat. What an opportunity. Keon Keeley is going to take his official visit to Columbus in Ohio State for this game this Saturday. And to me, you have to win games like this. Marcus Freeman has done a tremendous job selling the program, selling a vision in South Bend, what he wants his program to be. But when it comes down to it, you're a 17.5-point dog to one of the best teams in the country. If you can go in there, be competitive, and somehow find a way to win this game, to me, that's going to be the thing that moves the needle in terms of locking those type of players down.
Well, Cooper, let me ask you this. Let's go to the other side. You say they're competitive. What if this is worst case scenario and it's a blowout? I mean, boat race from Ohio State. They can't guard the receivers. They can't score points. I mean, what does that do for Marcus Freeman? Let's not forget, in the Fiesta Bowl, Freeman and the Irish did not look good. Now he opens his career up 0-2. I mean, they've done a great job of selling the program, selling all this stuff. But wouldn't there be some questions about, hey, did Notre Dame make the right move with Marcus Freeman and Tommy Rees? I mean, I could see it going the way you're saying, yeah, we get a competitive game. But what happens if Notre Dame looks lost out there? Because I think there's certainly a situation. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that could play out on Saturday.
Only 2 games into Marcus Freeman's tenure, but for sure, that's definitely a scenario that you could possibly foresee. And if you're Notre Dame, you lead the country right now in top 247 commitments. I think that's one thing right now. You know, they're battling to keep guys in the boat. Peyton Bowen, our director of recruiting, Steve Wolfong, had a story on him earlier today. One of the best safeties in the land. Texas A&M, Oklahoma are coming after him. And the way that Notre Dame recruits, they recruit nationally. So these battles are only going to be tougher. And the only way that you can continue to cement these relationships that you've put in so much sweat equity to is to win football games. And that's the only thing that is left for Marcus Freeman and his staff to prove, is to win football games. And they don't necessarily have to do that on Saturday with where they're ranked right now in the AP poll, ranked number 5, playing the number 2 team. But if they're competitive in that game, I think that gives them the grounds to build a foundation for the rest of the season. But listen, after that as well, right? I mean, they got Clemson coming to town. They go to Los Angeles in the Coliseum and play Lincoln Riley and USC and Caleb Williams. Like, there's going to be a couple gut check moments for Marcus Freeman this year, Drew. And I think you're exactly right. I haven't thought much about that scenario. But what if this game is a 3-possession game where Ohio State rolls against Notre Dame, and then all of a sudden you're kind of asking some questions about, okay, how's this going to play out?
Well, I think it's also going to be hard for Notre Dame to play defense if it were to go down that path and the losses start piling up. Remember, Notre Dame brought a lot of their visitors in on the summer months. Keon Keeley was one of them. So, when you can't ensure that you're going to get that last campus visit, it creates a situation where other schools smell blood in the water, and then they move in and try to make a move. Cooper, I wanted to say, we're talking about Notre Dame. I think Ohio State's got a lot to gain this weekend as well. Keon Keeley, we brought him up at length. He's going to be in town on an official visit. Damon Wilson, one of my favorite prospects in the class of 2023. Larry Johnson and the Buckeyes are really looking for some pass rushers. And then on top of that, some of these commits that are getting linked to other schools, they're going to be back in town. Brandon Ennis, Mark Fletcher, we talked about them being associated with Miami. You also got Jelani Thurman, the tight end. Auburn is trying to stay in the picture there. Same with Cedric Hawkins, a safety out of the Sunshine State. To me, I think it was a so-so summer for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. As crazy as that sounds when it comes to recruiting, we talked about it. They had some big visit weekends. Things didn't really pan out. So I think if they go out and they do make a statement in a rowdy horseshoe, I think that could help propel their class, keep it together, and allow them to go, try to reel in some other big fish.
Shows you what the standard is at Ohio State right now. You're currently sitting in the top 10 in the recruiting rankings. But Drew, I think you're right. I mean, last show we talked about Brandon Ennis, top 247 receiver, along with Mark Fletcher. You talk about these teams that are coming after him. Miami certainly being one of those teams as well. Tennessee coming after Carnell Tate. I think the NIL specifically, the wrinkle of that now into college football, I think Ohio State has kind of taken that on the chin a little bit. That might be a little bit strong in terms of trying to paint a picture there. I think Ohio State is still recruiting at a very elite level, but some of these guys that maybe in the past they wouldn't have as much resistance, or maybe there wouldn't be as much of a second thought in the process. Now you have NIL a factor. Mario Cristobal's at Miami, Billy Napier's at Florida, Josh Heupel certainly starting to get things going in Tennessee. So Ohio State, I'm with you. Damon Wilson, Keon Keeley, listen, if you get one of those two guys, I think you're ecstatic if you're Larry Johnson, and certainly Ohio State has the ability to finish with a bang on the recruiting trail. But Drew, let's get to the Sunday night football matchup, one that we have talked about all offseason, Drew, and it's finally here. We got Florida State, Mike Norvell, must-win season. You got Brian Kelly, his first year in the Bayou at LSU. Been a lot of chatter. How's he going to fit in down south? I think he's done a tremendous job on the recruiting trail, but I want to go back to Mike Norvell. We've kind of, I would say, beat this horse dead on this one, and the implications of Florida State coming into this game. Right now, the line favors LSU -3. So Florida State, if they win this game, Drew, we talked a lot about Hakeem Williams, the involvement. Conrad Hussey, a Penn State commit, a guy that we like a lot, the 4-star safety out of St. Thomas Aquinas. To me, Florida State can really make a statement here if they can somehow find a way to win this game.
Well, it's been Thanksgiving weekend of 2017 was the last time FSU took down an SEC program, and that was Florida. Obviously, this is a bit different. Neutral site, open up the season against LSU. I think if Mike Norvell was able, and the Seminoles were able to beat the Tigers, that's a signature win, not only for him, but also his new offensive coordinator, Alex Atkins. I think one of the keys to the victory here is FSU is going to have to win up front. They're going to have to stop that LSU pass rush. And let's assume they head back to Tallahassee 2-0, a bigger reason would be because of the Seminoles' offensive line play. Now, what does that mean for recruiting? The two headliners for FSU in this class are Lucas Simmons, the top 247 offensive tackle out of Sweden, and then Roderick Kearney, the guard from the Jacksonville area. I think if Florida State takes down LSU, you're only ensuring that those guys are going to stay true to their word and play for Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell. So I think FSU, it's clear cut right here, man. This could be a signature win for the Seminoles, probably one of their biggest wins in 3, 4, 5 years. This is another one for me where it's must-watch TV. How's this going to shake out? There's still plenty of questions about LSU, but FSU has been nice and reserved on the recruiting trail all summer, right? Going back to last year and everything that happened with Travis Hunter. I think if they win in the Mercedes-Benz or the Superdome, or whatever they call it now, I think those guys are going to flex, and we're going to hear all about it because they're going to go on the road during their bye week and they're going to be wearing the FSU polos and they're going to have some a new pep in their step.
Sure, it pains me in my heart anytime you get anything affiliated with New Orleans wrong. The Caesars Superdome, it changes all the time, so I don't blame you. But, there's a lot riding on this game for Brian Kelly. Maybe not as much pressure, but you talk about LSU, the situation that they're in right now, one of the best classes in all the country, one of the best classes in the SEC. That was the big question with Brian Kelly. Is he going to be able to recruit at LSU, the number 7 class in the country right now? They're tops right there with Georgia, Alabama in the SEC with top 247 commitments. But you look at the guys they have on the board. Nicholas Harbor, the number 9 player in the country. Bravion Rogers, the corner out of Texas. DJ Chester, Zalline Spurd, who's making a decision tomorrow. They're in good shape there. Javian Toviano, Jordan Matthews, who's committed to Tennessee. They're still working on. Brian Kelly and LSU. Listen, all those names I rattled off, I think they're in the 1 or 2 spot riding shotgun. So if they can get the majority of those guys in the boat, I think LSU, without a doubt, is in position to finish with a top 5 class. And if you're Brian Kelly, those goals, the expectations coming into the season, you got to be really happy with that.
Riding shot, did you just come up with that term, or is that like from your recruiting days at Alabama, riding shotgun? Because I love that term. That'll be used in some of my stories moving forward. No, I agree. I think with LSU as well, and you've touched on this in the past, LSU thought they were kind of playing catch up in the 2023 cycle. We talked about tomorrow, midnight tonight, September 1st, first day you guys can formally contact juniors, and who's those you guys? I mean, that's staffers at colleges. I think LSU, man, if they open up 1-0 and they put on a show in New Orleans, I'm not even going to try to announce the stadium, that's going to allow the Tigers to get active in that 2024 cycle and ensure that they get a top 10 recruiting class. Again, I think this is must-watch TV on Sunday night. I don't want to be dialed in.
It's going to be a big one. Labor Day weekend, LSU, Florida State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Florida, Utah, Oregon, Georgia, Cincinnati, Arkansas. The list goes on and on. We are back, brother, and I love it. But that's college football. Drew, I got some noise from up top, the people up top that say, hey, what's the deal? I thought you guys were named Preps to Pros. You guys need to talk a little bit of the NFL. So we're going to talk a little bit of Sunday action. And Drew, you're very creative mind. You always come up with ways. How can we tie in the NFL to formally of college football rankings, or what we do, and how do we make that kind of go with each other and marry that up? So I thought that was interesting. One of the days that I think everybody who's an NFL fan has on their calendar is that roster cut day. And there were some guys, Drew, that were not only highly touted prospects coming out of high school, but they were very good football players in college as well. And there were some surprises. And I want to start with a 2021 first-round pick of the Las Vegas Raiders, the number 17 pick in the draft, and a guy that played a lot of football for the Alabama Crimson Tide and Nick Saban. That is offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood. And since we've gotten on this show, he's gotten claimed by the Chicago Bears. But, Drew, this was kind of one that left a lot of people scratching their head.
Yeah, and I did some reading and kind of, scrolling through the social media. It seems like the big take from NFL insiders and NFL draft experts is that the Oakland Raiders kind of overvalued Alex Leatherwood. Most people had a second round grade on him. They end up taking him late in the first round. And I think this is just kind of a case where one set of evaluators see it one way, the rest of the league sees it the other way. And to me, the Alex Leatherwood move, they're kind of cutting bait while they can ahead of the game. So I wanted to ask you, Cooper, I mean, you've been in a situation before where there's a changing of the guard up top. I mean, how difficult does that make it for a prospect, and a prospect that has a ton of pressure on them, like a 5-star? I mean, Alex Leatherwood not only was a 5-star coming out of high school, but he was a first-round pick, and that's a 5-star at the next level. So how difficult does that make it, you being on the personnel side, when there is a change at the top?
Listen, obviously I've never been on the NFL side. I'm just trying to understand it. I think you want to come in with an objective lens. I think the coaches are going to have more of a hands-on experience. There's going to be more attachment to some players on the roster, but you got to come in with a clean slate, and you have to afford that to the players as well. John Gruden, Mike Mayock, the former regime in the Las Vegas Raiders, obviously Josh McDaniels coming in to Las Vegas and shaking things up. But to me, listen, the disparity in the grade range, I believe, was day 2 to day 1. The Raiders take him at number 17. I mean, you're talking about a guy that started 41 consecutive games at Alabama in the SEC. He also started at right guard. They moved him over to left tackle. He played there his last 2 years in Tuscaloosa. So in terms of position versatility and flexibility in the NFL, you got to be 6-7 deep at the offensive line position. So to me, even if you don't like him at the tackle spot, whether it's the left or right side, to not move him inside and maybe get some more exposure there to see if that would be a better fit long term is a little bit mind-boggling to me with the Raiders. We've talked about the cap hit. I'm not as familiar there in that situation, but you're taking on $11 million in dead money. But I think, like I said, you want to be open-minded in that process. The Raiders certainly didn't see that way. Now Alex Leatherwood is going to get another chance with the Chicago Bears, and sometimes that's what you need. Both parties, you just got to cut bait. Maybe the Raiders said, hey, this is not going to work out for us. And for Chicago, now you got a guy you're kicking the tires on who got drafted last year in the first round. Even if you didn't see him that way, that's pretty good value. Yeah,
let's go to the next guy, Kellen Mond's quarterback, former Texas A&M Jimbo Fisher guy. I mean, I remember seeing Kellen Mond at IMG Academy, and then I saw him throw back during COVID. Kind of Brandon Marshall did his own pro day down here in Fort Lauderdale, and they sent me out there. I went and saw Kellen Mond, and I actually watched a preseason game a few weeks ago when he was with the Vikings, and to me, Kellen Mond has been the same quarterback for the past 4 or 5 years. There's really been no major developments in my eyes, and that's just one talent evaluator. So, a bit surprising. I think another takeaway with Kellen Mond now with the Browns, hitting the market is Jimbo Fisher. We give him so much credit for being a quarterback whisperer. His day 1 and day 2 selections, they don't really pan out and get to that second contract with a team. I'm talking, Jamarcus Russell, Christian Ponder, E.J. Manuel, Jameis Winston, and now Kellen Mond. So it seems like Jimbo gets the most out of those guys at the collegiate level, and then they don't really work out in the NFL. And just something I noticed as I was kind of putting this show together.
To his credit, he's gotten them right everywhere he's been, whether that's been at Florida State or whether that's been at Texas A&M, even at LSU as well. But, I mean, you look at Kellen Mond, it was kind of interesting. He had an uptick his last 2 seasons in College Station, a guy that drastically improved his TD to INT ratio. He won the MVP of the Senior Bowl in Mobile. So if you're looking at him from a scouting standpoint, this was a guy that was certainly an arrow-up guy. Minnesota takes him the second pick of the 3rd round just a year ago. But, Drew, back to the regime change. I believe Minnesota, they had some changes in the front office. Rick Spielman was there for an awful long time in Minnesota, the guy calling the shots there. The alignment, it's a critical when observing this and how things change and how they can change so quickly. But I believe, and I'm going to have to go back and fact check this, and maybe Jesse can whisper in my ear, but 3 of the first 4 draft picks in last year's draft for Minnesota now gone, right? So this is not just Kellen Mond. This is 3 other guys being cut as well. So certainly something to keep an eye on. It just goes to show the cruelty of the NFL. Cleveland Browns pick up Kellen Mond. But, Drew, the one of the last guys here, and to me, out of all the guys that we're talking about, this had to be one of the more fascinating ones, because you kind of wonder, how did he arrive at this decision? You start to do a little bit more research. The puzzle pieces start to come together. But Kevin Austin, a guy that was a highly recruited guy out of the Florida area, the number 141 player in 2018, the number 21 receiver. He had a really up and down career at Notre Dame that really he just didn't have a lot of exposure until this past season, where he's one of the best receivers and leading targets on the team. He goes undrafted. Jacksonville Jaguars pick him up, but he found himself on the outside looking in as well this week.
So I'm going to go in a different direction here with Kevin Austin and kind of tie this back into college. I mean, Kevin is a guy who came out early. He could have played another season of college football. And when we look at Notre Dame, we just kind of handicap their game against Ohio State. One of the big question marks for the Irish is wide receiver. And to me, is Kevin Austin a guy that potentially should have stayed in college, and maybe not at Notre Dame, but what about at another Power 5 program? We're in the NIL era right now where these guys can get, six-figure deals from different schools. I know Miami's a school that's looking for a wide receiver. Florida was looking for a wide receiver. Kevin Austin, he's the kid from South Florida. I think he could have got some type of NIL deal to go to either program and play. And when you start looking, I saw someone tweet this out, the practice squad salaries for rookies. If you're a rookie on a practice squad for all 17 weeks, you make about $200,000. So to me, I'm just wondering, and I've heard this from industry sources, are we going to see more of these fringe guys stay in college for guaranteed money instead of testing the NFL waters? I think that's something to keep an eye on moving forward when we talk NFL draft and roster management.
It's a great point. To me, it also depends who's in your ear, who's the one telling you to make these decisions, who's the one telling you to leave early. Because I think if you look at the data in the NFL, guys that declare early, depending on the position, especially at the receiver position, there's not a lot of success. So you look at Kevin Austin, a guy that I think had single-digit receptions before this past season at Notre Dame, where he had 48 receptions. He had over 800 yards receiving. So the arrow is up. And you talk to some people at Notre Dame, Tom Loy, who works at the Notre Dame site, and you talk about, hey, one area where they feel a little shorthanded right now is the receiver position. So all this opportunity for Kevin Austin, whether that's in South Bend or somewhere else, there's a lot of money to be made, not only in college now with NIL, but you better position yourself on Sundays and improve your draft stock as well. So I don't understand that decision from Kevin Austin. You go back and you look at it, he misses all of his sophomore season, suspended from the team. The next season, he's banged up with a foot injury. He can't stay on the field. He comes back and he has his best year, and then he's gone. But it's 1 year of sample size. Drew, me and you talk about that all the time. That makes it difficult for us at this level to evaluate prospects as well. So at the NFL, where it's a billion-dollar industry, talent evaluators, they need to see more. But certainly a really good case study.
Oh, you're always going to take the guy you know more information about, the guy you're most familiar with, the guy you have the most intel off. I mean, you look at our rankings, it's the guys that we have the most verified on. Those guys are always going to rise to the top instead of those question marks. But no, fascinating subject. I think all those guys landed on teams, but certainly some big names to hit get cut on a very grim day for the NFL.
Drew, last one for you, though, because I know you wanted to talk about this one. Charleston Rambo, same boat, starts his career at Oklahoma, plays 4 years there, transfers to Miami, has a great season, ends up going undrafted, and now he finds himself cut from, I believe, the Carolina Panthers this week.
Yeah, I think if he's at Miami, Miami's a for sure 10-win team. At least that's what the guys at Inside the U were telling me this morning. No, this is kind of the same thing with Kevin Austin and Charleston Rambo, who has an awesome name. Don't you think in the NIL era, someone would love to do a commercial with him? We saw Dakotas Crawford do one there in Nebraska with an AC unit. Rambo could have got something. So I think he kind of flies in that same category. Are we going to see more guys take NIL deals and stay in college because they know that they're going to get money and they can provide for what they need in certain situations?
There you go, a little NFL segment for you, a little NFL segment for our boy Trey Scott, who I know loves that. But Drew, our 2-minute drill, and it's something that we are getting a little bit more acclimated to. It's a little personal flavor in this, but you sent this to me and producer Jesse earlier in the week, and it was something that you felt was very relatable from Sundays to Saturdays, but our good friend Daniel Jeremiah moved the sticks in the NFL Network. He had a pretty interesting tweet, and I'll read it out for you. He said, I hear the same thing in conversations around the NFL during this time of year. Everyone is looking to upgrade bottom of the OL group and cornerback group.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when I saw this tweet, I said you could take this tweet, change it to college circles, drop it in December and early February, and it's the same thing around those signing days, the early signing period and traditional national signing day. All these schools are in the spring evaluation period. They love to evaluate corners, they love to evaluate offensive linemen, and they love to evaluate pass rushers. And they always say, not big enough, not this, not that, not that. And I think sometimes they overthink it. At the end of the day, there's only a certain amount of corners that are going to grow off the tree. There's only a certain amount of offensive linemen. There's only a certain amount of pass rushers. But these premium positions, I think sometimes schools overlook it, and they're always looking to grab those guys right at the deadline. I mean, it's a premium position. We know it's a passing league. You want to get after the quarterback. You want to protect the quarterback, and then you want to have guys out on the boundary. So it's not surprising, but I thought it was pretty funny to see that the NFL, it's the same thing as on college. And I'm sure if we look down in high school, they're at the parks trying to scout different offensive linemen and corners and pass rushers as well.
They're the hardest to find. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in the SEC recruiting footprint or whether you're in the Pac-12 recruiting footprint, which we certainly struggled when I was at Washington and at Oregon. But you have to make those two position groups, along with the pass rushing presence as well, the priority in any recruiting cycle. And I think we've seen that certainly. You talk to guys in NFL circles, in front offices and personnel departments, they will tell you, listen, if you have the size and the athleticism and you have a pulse at the offensive line position, you're probably going to be in the mix to make an NFL roster. So that just goes to show how hard it is, even on Sundays, to find the guys that can go out there and give you a chance. But Drew, my 2-minute drill, I want to get into some trap games, and I got 3 of them. But since we're up against the clock, I kind of want you to pick one. I'm going to list 3 of these. I'll name the line as well. These are games that I kind of have circled. And this one tomorrow night's got my attention, but Penn State at Purdue. Penn State, a 3.5-point favorite. Penn State has won 9 straight meetings against Purdue. They haven't won since Kyle Orton. You remember my guy, Kyle Orton? It was at Purdue. They've won the past 4 by 24 points. Penn State, they finished the year, their last 8 games, they went 2-6. So I got that one circled. That's going to be a night game in West Lafayette at 8 o'clock Eastern. Then we got Louisville. -4 at Syracuse. Dino Babers, Scott Satterfield, big years for both of those guys. Malik Cunningham is back. I like Louisville here, but if this game, we've talked a lot about Louisville, if Syracuse somehow pulls this off, which I think is very plausible. Louisville, which has a very good recruiting class this year, you kind of wonder which way that's going to go. And then you have Memphis plus 15.5 at Mississippi State on Saturday. Memphis, who beat this team last season in week 3, 31-29. Mississippi State, arguably their best defense under Mike Leach coming back. Will Rogers at quarterback, a lot of continuity there, but 15.5, I was like, I don't know about that. And I think Memphis can challenge them in Starkville, so we'll see. But Drew, any one of those games stick out to you?
Definitely Memphis, man. Memphis, I was doing a deep dive on their recruiting class last night, and they definitely recruit NFL traits. I know they did that under Mike Norvell. They got some guys playing on Sundays, but 15.5, I mean, that's over the key number 14. Give me Memphis. That might make its way onto my card. I didn't even have that on my radar, so thank you, Cooper, for giving me another Saturday play here.
Drew, I got to ask, sometimes I legitimately get concerned about you staying up late at night. I know how much of a workaholic you are. Explain to me, why are you doing a deep dive on Memphis on Tuesday night at 10 o'clock?
I'm covering my region, man, ranking the guys. Javius Boyd out of Jones County. Keep an eye on him, running back. 89. I made him an 89. This is a 10-7 kid. He's got 313 yards on 23 touches here, 2 games into his senior season. I think he's a Power 5 guy, and he's going to go be a Memphis Tiger, so I'm fired up.
Best in the business. Get in the weeds with the Oyster Boys. That's what we do. But once again, I want to thank you guys again. We had a great show on Monday, and certainly one that we're very proud of. We're hoping to keep that positive momentum going. If you like the show, make sure you like it on YouTube. If you like our channel, make sure you subscribe. Leave a comment as well. Frank H., the Oklahoma fan, you said my energy wasn't good enough. Hey, I love it. I'm trying to channel it that this week, get better and better. But as always, guys, enjoy this weekend. It's going to be a great weekend. We will be back 3 o'clock Eastern on Monday, and we will have tons to talk about. But for Andrew Ivins, I'm Cooper Petagna, and we'll see you next week.